Welcome to Chopstick Travel. I'm Luke Martin, and today I'm in Taiwan. I've come to a little town called Lukang here in central Taiwan. It's famous for its old architecture and tons of popular street foods you can try here. But I've also come here to see this factory here, which is making mianxian, which is a tiny noodle that's famous here in Lukang. They're doing it in a traditional way in this really cool setting. It's a factory, but really it's like a house. So I'm gonna learn how they're making the mianxian, and of course I'm gonna taste it for myself. I'm also gonna sample the street foods here in Lukang. It's gonna be a great episode, so make sure you stay tuned until the end. Let's go eat some Taiwanese food. So in this little room here, she's got the noodle. It's thick right now, but it's going to be thin when they're finished. So she's stretching it out between these two wooden sticks, and it's all about the technique, and she's super fast. The floor here is completely covered in flour, so they keep putting the flour on the noodles to prevent it from sticking together, and she's just barefoot in here with a ton of flour on the floor. And then they're going to take it outside to stretch it out to become very thin mianxian, the really thin noodles, and dry it under the sun. But this is just like the first step here. It's a really cool process, and they're doing it completely traditional, all by hand, of course. This factory is housed in a traditional Taiwanese home. This is called a sanheyan, which means like a three-part compound, so multiple generations of the family will live here. And you can see up here, this wood has these holes in it, so I'm imagining they're going to bring the noodles out and string them up with the wooden poles. So they brought the noodles outside now, and she's pulling them and hand stretching them until they're the desired thinness, and it's almost like a dance. She keeps going back and forth, making sure to pull them but not too much as to break them, and they're becoming super thin. And then the second process is to hang them up, as I said, on these wooden beams here and let them dry underneath the sun and the wind, and you can just see they are so thin, ultra thin, and this place is gonna just fill up with noodles here. Watching them make the noodles here is like stepping back in time. Of course, they're making them handmade, but making them here at this sanheyan, this traditional Taiwanese brick home, just completes the traditional feel. It feels so authentic. This is not set up, this is not an attraction, there's no tourists here. This is just the factory, the way that they're doing it for 4 generations at the shop, and it's really particular the way they have to do it. They need to be always watching it because it depends on the weather. If it's too hot, the sun's too strong, they might dry out faster, so they could crack. Or if it's too windy, they might all tangle up together. So they're really careful to watch the noodles and make sure they're drying properly. head into Lukang now, the town, and try out these noodles for myself. This was so cool to see how they're made, but let's go taste them. This is the spot to try the mianqian noodles here in Lukang. It is absolutely packed with locals, and this is the dish. So you can see it is an extremely thick noodle soup. It's thickened with starch. There's chunks of pork in there, a little bit of cilantro on top, and you can see all of that beautiful, beautiful thin noodles. But you gotta load this up with some of the toppings. So there is some vinegar on the table, black vinegar here, so go generous with that. And also some chili sauce as well. And then give that a little bit of a mix. Oh, it smells so good of vinegar. Let's try out some of these famous noodles. Whoa. It's almost like you can't even feel the noodles at all because the soup is so thick, it kind of blends in with the noodles. It's like a paste almost. And noodles so thin, obviously. The flavor is mainly coming from that chili and vinegar that I put in there. Let me try to find a piece of pork in there. Oh yeah, you can see a nice piece of pork. It looks like it maybe was fried too. The texture is extreme. Super, super sloppy, goopy noodles. But wow, that is good. Addicting. Just the first stop here in Lukang because there's a lot to try. You can't even eat this with chopsticks, only spoons. These are the most slurpable noodles. It's like eating soup with no noodles because the noodles just blend in with that thick broth. Amazing with the vinegar. And such a cool thing to see how they're making these noodles and then come to this restaurant and see just how popular they really are. And that's the reason you're able to keep those traditions alive, is because people still like to eat it. You can see just how popular it is. They've got two massive cauldrons of the noodles, and the customers just keep coming and they keep cooking them. And that was absolutely delicious. So good. So this is Lukang Old Street. It's one of many old streets, as they call them here in Taiwan. Basically just these old architectural streets here in Taiwan, but this one in Lukang is one of the oldest, and it's one of the nicest, well-kept ones I've ever seen. So you've got all this old red brick. There's ancient Chinese architecture, and they've got the Chinese lanterns hanging too. It's quite a busy place, and it's just full of touristy things nowadays, but still the architecture is incredible. I just popped into one of the old stores along Lukang's Old Street, and this shop is just absolutely beautiful on the inside. All the original woodwork, and it's been painted in these beautiful colors, and this shop is selling different drinks and different desserts. So I went with something I've never tried before. This is wheat roasted flour tea, and it's iced, and it looks like there's some puffed rice on top. So I guess it's roasted wheat flour, and then it's kind of just like brewed into a tea. Let me just try this. Oh, that's refreshing. Really nutty. Kind of reminds me of rice milk mijiang. You can taste a little bit of sesame in there too. And then the rice puffs have become saturated, so they completely fall apart in your mouth. What a cool shop though. Incredibly beautiful. Amazing place to take pictures. And good drink too. The owner just told me he calls this Taiwanese cappuccino. It is really nice and thick. It's almost milky, but it's just made with that roasted wheat. This place is worth just stopping in no matter what you order, just because the beauty of the shop is incredible. My owner wants to show me something here. Look at this. So he actually makes these himself, and he's been to France, a bunch of different countries to teach people how to make these like figurines.
完全纸做的。
Wow, 很漂亮。
只有这个塑胶的。
Whoa, this is intricate. He can take the hat off. He's got a little beard on there. Wow, and it's all handmade. He does these himself. Very cool.
Hey,
Wow.
谢谢谢谢。
So the owner was just telling us that some of the buildings along Lukang's Old Street are over 400 years old, and he's got these posters up on the wall in this shop that are about 100 years old from Shanghai. He bought this building and renovated it about 40 years ago. It's just so cool. I love all this beautiful painting and all the woodwork in here. So cool. Wow, that is the coolest shop ever, and you can really feel the tradition here at Lukang, from seeing those handmade noodles to walking along the street and hearing about the history here. It's really a place where you can feel the traditions of Taiwan. I've come to this little stall that's selling a unique street food that I've never seen before, but it's popular here in Lukang. It's a Taro Cake. So basically he takes this little cup, lines the bottom with some shredded taro, and then a little bit of pork on the inside, and then tops it with some more taro. So it's like a little saucer. And then they steam them, and that's it. So it's just steamed taro with pork on the inside. I've never seen this in Taiwan before, but it's, like I said, really popular here in Lukang. So I'm gonna order one up, try it out. Here's the final result. It looks quite interesting. I've never seen anything quite like this. And she also put a sauce on it. It looks like a sweet and maybe a little bit spicy sauce. So look at all that purple taro in there. That is really unique. And there's some pork on the inside. Let's try it. That's unique. The texture on the outside is like almost like a potato. And then the inside's nice and porky. It's reminds me of almost a Taiwanese meatball, but the texture is really unique. It's kind of like a dumpling, but the wrapper is taro. Yeah, not my favorite, but it's pretty good. Sauce is a little bit sweet. A popular sweet here in Lukang is known as cow's tongue cake. So this is it right here. It's all about the shape. There's no beef in it whatsoever. It's just sugar-filled, pan-fried dough. And you can see they've got all the fresh ones that are just cooking here. And it smells really good. It's simple, but really interesting name, cow's tongue, just because of the shape, long and oval shape. Fresh and hot off the pan. Does it look like a cow tongue? I think it does. Let's open it up. There's not actually just sugar inside, but it's like a wheat sugar. Oh, it is seriously hot. Let's try that out. Nice and flaky. Well, it's pretty dry. It's not very sweet. Actually, it's really dry. There's not a whole lot of flavor, but it's nice and flaky on the outside. And a little sweet, but nothing much else. Not the best dessert I've ever had in Taiwan, but still cool. Now it looks like a tongue. just popped into Lukang's most famous temple. This is the Mazu Temple here in Lukang. It's right at the end of the old street, and it is extremely intricate and beautiful, just like every temple here in Taiwan. Always peaceful to come here and just take a little walk around, you know, cool off a little bit in the shade, and just enjoy the beauty of these temples. I love temple hopping here in Taiwan. It's one of my favorite things to do. You've got to check out at least a couple on your trip here. Directly outside of the temple, there is a seafood restaurant that sells, among other things, oyster omelets. They're famous for their oyster omelet. It's pretty Taiwanese to have the temple right beside the oyster omelet restaurant, and it's even more Taiwanese to have the family mart inside of the temple. So I'm gonna order up myself a oyster omelet. Very classic Taiwanese street food, the oyster omelet. Just a fried egg with some oysters and then some lettuce and a lot of starch batter. So it's got this really gooey texture from the starch. And then this place tops it with two different types of sauce. It looks like red sauce and brown sauce. Probably spicy and sweet. And I'll kind of cut this in half. You can see that plump, beautiful fresh oyster. Lukang is very close to the coast, the west coast of Taiwan, and then you can also see that kind of gooey texture from the starch, and there are a lot of oysters in there. Look at that. Oh, go for a dip. It's all about that goopy texture. Wow. Let's try that. It's a really interesting texture. It's something you're gonna have to get used to if you come to Taiwan, because it definitely caught me off guard when I first came here. There's a lot of these interesting kind of gooey textures. I don't want to call it snotty, but it definitely is kind of a snotty texture. The oyster though, super fresh, very close to the coast here, and you get a little fresh crunch from the lettuce in there as well. This place has two sauces. So you've got the red sauce, which is almost like a little tangy, ketchup-y, and then the brown sauce, which is a lot sweeter. It's balanced nicely. It's so good. That's one of the better oyster omelets I've ever had. Guys, Lukang is such a cool little town. You have to check it out if you get a chance on your trip to Taiwan. It's just outside of Chunghua City, and I'd say it's certainly one of the most traditional places I visited in Taiwan. Seeing those noodles being made by hand this morning and then traveling that old street, it was like stepping back in time. And if you enjoyed today's video, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you get notified when I post the next one. See you guys on the next episode of Chopstick Travel. Bye.